This afternoon, we're all here to talk about a topic which I think, it's a cloud cybersecurity summit. And it's a cloud security. And we're thinking many times, at what point does the buck stop? Most of us are in cybersecurity work. Most of us have solutions. Most of us actually your role to ensure security in the business that you do. But as you do that, how many times are we pushing limits in terms of considering people's privacy? And here goes now my introduction. I'm Rosemary Koech-Kimwatu. I work with KCV and I'm the Data Protection Officer. So in your day-to-day work, do you ever think about the balance? And I guess that's what we're here to discuss today. The ethics around cybersecurity addressing issues of hacking, surveillance, and human rights. And I'll have my panelists say at least hello to you and exactly who they are and what they do. Then we'll jump right into the questions. Karibu sana.
Good afternoon. I'm Feza Kilonzo, a cybersecurity engineer at CyberGuard Africa, community lead as well in the cybersecurity space here in Kenya.
Karibu sana.
Hi everyone. My name is Nancy Moretti. I'm a cybersecurity consultant, and I'm also the programs lead for She Hacks Kenya.
Welcome.
Hi. So my name is Andreas. I have absolutely nothing to do with cybersecurity. But I have been in the technology space for years and years and years. And for sure, I've been touching the aspect of cybersecurity and security data protection and so on throughout my career. Currently, I'm a technical advisor in different positions.
Thank you very much. Andreas, and you?
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Richard Mugwe is my name. I look after cloud and cybersecurity for Liquid Intelligent Technologies. Thank you.
Okay. So as we build cybersecurity platforms, as we engage and make sure that businesses are resilient, protected, we've had a panelist speaking about how good their systems are. My question is, can cybersecurity professionals balance their obligations to protect sensitive information and networks, the ethical responsibility, with respect to human rights and privacy? Is it possible? I'll start with you.
That's a long question. I don't know what part you want me to start with.
Now let me make it easy for you. Is it, in your mind, a yes-no question when you're building a system to offer security? Is it security first, your privacy next? Is there a balance that can be created? Or are we lawyers? I'm so happy to see so many lawyers in CIO panels. Yeah. Are we asking too much?
No. So I think what it boils down to is, number one, understanding what you're doing. If you're building a security policy, you're building a security system, you must understand the full ecosystem where you're building this thing, what you're building it for. And then when it comes to the players within the ecosystem, and that's where the people come in, that's where the owners of the data come in, that's where the identifiable objects, either natural people or corporate citizens, come in. So what now boils down to is responsibility. So if you've built a policy, if you've built a regulation or a rule that works for these entities, then it will be the responsibility of the users. There has to be the people who operate the cybersecurity system that you've built. Those are the people that, number one, need to be trained. So training and them having knowledge is key. Once they have that knowledge, then it goes to the in-depth character of a person. You have to be responsible. You have to have integrity within yourself. So again, you can build all the policies, you can build all the regulations, you can build all the systems, but it goes down to the DNA of a person you're working with, or the DNA of a person who's operating those systems, and what has been inculcated into them.
Andreas, you said you know nothing about cybersecurity. Tell us about the ethics in my question.
So actually, like yesterday, I was asked to come here and speak about this. And so first of all, what is actually ethics? I think that is a very, very important aspect. So what does ethics actually mean? So ethics comes from the Greek word ethos. So it's about the area, the culture, and everything like this that you're in. And that is kind of formulating then also kind of the ethics and the moral aspects of it. So now, if we're talking about ethics in cybersecurity, I think we need to also look into ethics as the part of like which cultural background is it coming from. For example, we had this example earlier about the exposure of this fintech in Kenya that was then removed from Twitter. So that is a very good example. Most likely in Europe, this would have been seen, yes, public needs to know. Whereby potentially here, like we learned yesterday as well, there are reports of banking issues and so on that are not exposed to the public. Is this ethically correct? Yeah, so those would be then the question. I think the aspect of ethics in cybersecurity is also a question around the culture and so on, where this is kind of seen. But in the end, what is very important is, I think, as Richard said, is the person that is driving this, is it an ethically driven person? Because not everything is protected by the law, as we heard on the previous panel. Yeah, so now it's all about the person that is driving this. Is he an ethically intentional or a moral-driven person, or is it not a moral-driven person? I think that is very important. And this is, again, also coming back to know your employee. It's a very, very important aspect, I think, as well in data protection and so on, and in general, a business aspect. Yeah, so it has nothing to do only with cybersecurity. Okay.
I think you mentioned a very important thing. Know your employee, but how much? Most of us, a number of us here are employees, a number of us are employers. Where does the ethical, where is that drawn? And Nancy, still answering the same question, I'm sure you build solutions, you advise on this. Is there a balance that can be created?
The answer to your question is yes, there needs to be a balance. I'll say two things on this. For one, organizations need to strike a balance between how much data they need and also privacy concerns for the consumers or the clients. That depends on the case. Also, something else that needs to be considered is we have to consider privacy approach from the beginning as we build solutions, as we build systems and all these things, because the funny thing is most consumers don't know about the dangers of it. For example, I would throw a question maybe to the crowd. For example, when you're downloading a software or an app, and there's the terms and conditions part of it, or how will your data be used, how many read that? How many? How many actually read that? Or you just click I agree and just move on. So it's a concern, and the fact that most people, consumers or clients or whatever the case is, are not aware of the risks that comes with this. As organizations, it's definitely a responsibility organizations need to take up.
Okay. So with Faiza, we'll move to our next picture. What ethical considerations should be there? As we've talked about ethics, we've talked about you need to think of yourself as a person, you need to think about your integrity as a business. But what tools are these practically that those of us seated here in this room will be able to build and actually implement in building ethical cybersecurity?
I think one of the things getting to have a look at is we're designing systems using what Nancy has said, security, ensuring that there's security in all the systems that are being built. Does the end user understand what he needs or what she needs? Does the company, organization, and do what the builders build? Is it secure enough? What information do they need? What information don't they need as well? Getting to see some of the tools as a cybersecurity and as a penetration tester by career, getting to see what the tools that I'm using and the tools that individuals are using. Are they securing the systems? What information is it leaking out? Because some of the tools that are being used out there by different individuals, we get to see that some of them have a back channel. So do you understand as a security person, do you understand what are some of the tools that you're using in order to ensure that there is security of this information within this organization, and what the end user is going to face in terms of using the system? Are they secure enough? Yeah.
And I'll go back to Richard. What Faiza is talking about is things even like when you call what, ethical hackers, white hats.
Yes.
Then under that there's colors. There's red team, purple team, and there's that, which other color? Blue team. Yeah. Yeah. You can see who was listening to Apriel's presentation, right? And my question to us, as we're building these tools, a number of these tools are quite offensive because you're actually scanning systems to make sure that there's adequate security. What considerations should you make from a technical perspective, in addition to what Faiza has said?
So, if you're, let's say you're doing a penetration testing. So first of all, before you get into that, there has to be an agreement. There has to be a governing kind of structure which you agree between you as a pen tester or you as an ethical hacker and the owner of either the data or the system. That needs to be followed to the latter, because that defines the level of penetration testing or the level of penetration that you do into the company information, the level of exposure that you can get the data out, and also where you will get this data to. Because once you do the audit, once you do a penetration testing, there will be a report. That document that you sign, or that agreement you have in the first place, will define where this report will go, how far you can share it, and who will have access to this report. So I think as we build, as we go into these penetration testing exercises, audits, we must at first have an agreement that we fully understand. We must go to those smaller fonts in the agreements that understand your responsibility, understand the extent of responsibility that you have, and understand what you can do, what you cannot do. So that agreement is very important for me.
Okay. I'm going to use your question to your answers to leverage on the next. You talked about you agree on how much, what are the boundaries, how far. Then comes in new technology that we all love and appreciate. What is a new thing nowadays? It's not very new, but it's gone on steroids in the past few weeks, hasn't it? Yeah? So as we incorporate AI into hacking, you've said that you need to see how far it goes. And you've written on a paper that will only go this far. Then you bring a system on steroids that gives you answers you didn't even know you wanted, you didn't know the questions too. Can you kindly give us your thoughts on that? On how we're using, say, new technology, how we're using the next level artificial intelligence to build cybersecurity platforms, and the considerations. So
actually, I read something about ethical AIs as well. Luckily, I tried to prepare myself. If you train an AI, it also depends on how you train it. Yeah. So actually, if you train it to be more ethical, I think it's possible to do that, and it will. I think also you can define the boundaries as well. Like I recently used ChatGPT, not the fourth version yet, the previous one, and you can actually define some parameters and so on that you want to be surrounding it. So I guess that if you train an AI model in the right way, you can actually also define the parameters. You can make this part of the training. But I think, again, the ethics don't come from the AI. The ethics here and the parameters around this come actually from the person and the system builders, effectively. An AI is not based on, like, I just learn by myself. Yeah, you train the AI, and then it applies this knowledge. So I think if we are building those kind of tools, we need to make sure that, again, it's within the boundaries either of the law or of ethics and of the kind of parameters that we are setting here.
Nancy, as a techie, he's talked very nicely from an ethical perspective. Do you think it's possible?
Okay, I'll answer and sort of touch on what Richard mentioned.
Yeah.
On offensive, I'm the offensive side of security.
Is that the red hat, the
red
hat
team? Yes, the red team. So in regards to that, what I would say, definitely the internet is here to stay, and I think that the need for cybersecurity will continue to rise because before, for example, when cloud became a thing, everyone knew moving to the cloud was the solution. Then the next question came, is the cloud safe? which was the next question. The same thing was seen with blockchain and all these other technologies. So coming up with offensive tools, there are definitely some of the considerations that have to be made. For one, there has to be a lot of transparency around how these tools should be used. What would happen if this tool gets to the wrong hands? Because we've seen that happen more than once, or some of the diverse consequences that would have. When it comes to AI, it's a blessing and a curse in itself, because AI makes things easier. Right now, I don't have to type an entire paragraph, right? I'll go to ChatGPT and tell it what I want, and you just type it for me. So, okay, I would say it helps. It definitely helps, but like what Andrea said, the thing with AI, it's biased. That's one thing, because it solely depends on the person who created it. You know, yeah. Also, another thing we have to consider, and we have to be truthful about AI, is AI works on large data. And you know, once you have data, you have everything. For example, I would say maybe, for example, like for M-Pesa, someone mentioned M-Pesa, we have Safaricom. Safaricom has us on a chokehold, because you might have 5 phones, but you still need an M-Pesa line. So I feel we have to be honest about this kind of things. AI is a good thing, but definitely with it comes the risk. Yeah.
Okay. And Faisal, do you want to contribute to that?
Yes. Richard said something that was quite interesting, and that touched on having the NDA whenever you're doing the penetration testing. But what of the ethics when it goes to someone who's doing bug bounty, a freelance cybersecurity penetration tester? How do we see that this individual will report using the proper set mechanisms, disclose to the specific individuals within the organization, and see how can we be able to reward this individual? I think in Kenya, there's only one company that has a bug bounty program that's working. So how can
Which company is that?
Safaricom.
Okay.
That's seen quite a number of people. Actually, it's public out there that quite a number of people and quite a number of my friends have gotten paid because of disclosing ethically and properly, saying that we found a bug on your system, this and that. And they reported it to the proper channels, and through the proper channels, how can we be able to see that even fintechs and various organizations in Kenya take on these individuals and assist them in terms of, okay, yes.
But Faisal, hold on there. And this goes to the next question, so I hope my panelists are listening. As we have all these cool things, bug bounty, telling fintechs that you need to fix this, we found this amount of customer data. What ethical concerns should be there in the management of cybersecurity and the personal data of customers? And those people who find themselves in that business ecosystem by virtue of engaging with you. What are your considerations on that?
I think from one point of view, you can look at it. To what extent do you do with this data? Will you use this data and say that I'm going to use this data, gain access to people's accounts and information, and use it to enrich myself? Or will I use this data and tell this organization that I found just a snippet, or I can be able to get such as X and X information within your system? So do this and this to secure your system, and proper mechanisms in which an organization can be able to take. Instead of having, I've gotten the information, I've gotten the data, I've done this and this within your organization and within your systems, don't penalize me because of helping you secure your system.
Okay. I'll answer that question in two parts of it. From the consumer side and from the company side. From the consumer side, as a consumer or a client, you have to know how much data should I give out. That's the first thing. For example, if I'm downloading maybe a free, maybe a clock, maybe an app clock, right? And then it's a free app. There are no in-app purchases, but you need my credit card details. That's already a red flag. Why should that happen?
And you're not paying for it.
They're not paying for it, right? Maybe we've seen that cases even on as you're trying to get applications or software, and maybe it's a random software, maybe like let me say, maybe a camera app, maybe, right? And then it needs access to your phone book. Like, why do you need access to my contacts for that? You see, so I feel for consumers, we need to know how much data we need to give out. That's the first part of it. Also, on the company side, on the organization side, there has to be a consideration that only ask for data that you'll need. And when you no longer need that data, it needs to be erased. So I asked that question in the crowd, and I think we only had like 2-3 people who read terms and conditions. We all click, I agree, I consent, I give my consent, let's proceed, let me get this up. So that's another consideration that has to be made by the organization's the organization side. Make sure that the data that you're asking for, it's actually limited to what you'll be using it for. And let there be transparency that I'm asking for your credit details because this app will be built or this solution will be built on a monthly or a yearly basis. Yeah.
I get so happy when I hear principles of data protection being recited by techies. Laws actually work. Sometimes we complain that laws come in. They actually help.
So I actually heard today about this, how is it called again? This
bug bounty?
Back bounty, the first time. So, and I'm concerned. I'm concerned because, like, Safaricom is now putting this out and says, okay, here, like, please find vulnerabilities. So now, but now what is happening if somebody is now not ethical with this data? He gets now data, he gets my personal information, identifiable information, my PII data, my name, in my case, my alien ID, and potentially my phone number. That's already sufficient. Now, like, he actually becomes a new, what is it called, a data processor. Yeah, so how is he actually under the Kenya data protection law, how is he actually now becoming one of those guys? Yeah, so, and what are now the principles around this one? And what, like, again, like, yes, ethically, fine, but I'm even more concerned, even from a legal perspective here, yeah, that this is even existing. Because in the end, like, I'm opening up, I'm even telling you, hey guys, I might not be secure. Come in and test everything, get my company's data, get my customers' data. I find, like, I have some concerns around this. I understand where this is coming from, and I do understand that this is, but I think, again, like if I now find somebody who is maybe not ethically correct and provides this and is looking more for other sources of income that might not be so legal and might be even faster, like, because I heard Safaricom is not paying so well. Somebody said this earlier to me, yeah. So, like, how, like, I think, again, like, it's all about ethics here, because the laws and the legal systems might not protect us yet. Yeah, so this is why it's, I think, very, very important that we also, like, how does this bounty thingy actually verify their customers,
I think
their users?
Content, bug bounty topic, one of these fine days. It's become a spin-off from this discussion, but I'll have Richard give us your thoughts.
So I think, in my view, in all these conversations we're having today, we will have tomorrow, we had last year, we're trying to chase something called 100%. Now, in security, in technology, in life, there's no 100%. That's why at some point people die, we don't know if that is where you're supposed to get 100%. So someone also spoke about the law having a lot of loopholes, which is true, I would say. It is the same way that when you deploy a security system, security solution, or a policy, it will still have loopholes. It is the same way when you become the best person in this room, the most ethical. Someone once said, every man has a price tag on the head. So you might be very ethical, you might be the best person, but guess what? When you walk out there, someone gives you something that you cannot resist, that will tempt you to the end. You're a human being, you will be tempted. So there is never 100%. Now, that calls for responsibility. If I own the data becomes my responsibility. The privacy of that data is my responsibility. The sharing, handling, processing of that data needs to be my responsibility. Now, because sharing is my responsibility, then it has to be my responsibility to make sure that if Andreas is getting my data, I educate him and tell him not only share my data or not only misuse my data, but if you misuse it this way, then this will be the impact. Maybe it's a company data. Guess what? Maybe 1,000 people might lose their jobs. This company might shut down. You care about the impact. So that's how I would look at it.
Okay. You know, when you're having fun, time really flies. I had one more thing to ask, and I'll maybe fast in a parting shot of about, say, 10 seconds each. Tell us about, because we also have to do Q&A. Yeah? In terms of reporting vulnerabilities, I think I already know, we should actually skip Andreas, because you already know he's going nuts about, about reporting responsibilities. But how do we build that ethically? And you know, this is quite recent, based on the example that was shared, I think last week. Yeah. 10 seconds.
So, parting shot, well, on that, probably say having the proper security reporting mechanisms within each and every organization. Let it be known that these are the individuals who are going to deal with any issue that arises. Whenever one reports an issue, this is how it is handled. This is how we have this record for record purposes, so that you can be able to know that given date X, issue X raised, this is how it was handled from start to end, and this is the proper mechanism that was followed within the organization. So setting those proper channels and proper mechanisms and the individuals.
Thanks, Lisa. I hope you're all listening. This is so important.
Okay, I'll keep it short.
Yes, ma'am.
But what I would say is organizations should have like a really good ethical framework, which considers we don't have to wait to be hacked so that you can find out what are the recovery methods, what's next after this and that. So from that, it will be easier if vulnerabilities are found. You asked about reporting. First off, I do bug bounties myself, at least I used to. They can be quite time daunting, you know. So for being a bug bounty hunter, or people who do research, who are in security researching, one thing that you have to know is the when and how to deliver the vulnerabilities that you have found. Because at times, the people, like someone mentioned, like, was it last week? There was, Twitter was on fire. Someone disclosed a vulnerability and put it out there for fintech. So you see, if for fintech, such a vulnerability has been found, we know this is there. What if they didn't have the measures in place to deal with it?
Thanks, Nancy.
They have no patch.
Asante sana.
Yeah.
Okay, Andreas? And then we'll have Richard finally. 10 seconds.
So I think the best way is first of all, what kind of vulnerability is it? Is it already a vulnerability that is already potentially a CVE or something like this? And so I think in the end it's quite important to follow the right channels, making sure that you're making the right people aware, and making sure that you're not making use of this vulnerability in any unethical way.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Finally, Richard, then we have Q&A.
Okay, so parting shots, I'd go back to my last statement. Your data is your responsibility. Whether someone else has it, or you have it, or it's been taken over by an AI system, it still remains your responsibility. As an organization, strive to build a culture where ethics becomes part of you. Don't wait to bring people in and then just show carrots and believe that they will behave. Build a good culture that will make sure that they follow all the policies you build, and they will support you in this data privacy journey. Thank you.
Over to Q&A, and my parting shot is read the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act and the Data Protection Act, and thoughts around what you're calling ethical hacking, bug bounties, because it's actually, in some instances, unauthorized access. So when you sign the bug bounty, does that become authorized access? So let's, just asking, I don't know. You said the laws are not perfect, but over to Q&A. Anybody with a question? Yes. Michael.
Thank you. So I will continue the theme Anthony left of malicious Mike.
Yeah.
So, as I discussed in ethics, why are we so concerned about ethics and threat actors or not? Is that putting us at a disadvantage to defend and to improve resilience? Then my second question, we are now getting to the stage of cyber warfare, and we are seeing a lot of that taking place. We have war crimes, and we have how war should be fought fairly. Are we going to come up with cyber war crimes? Thank you.
Thank you. Apriya? I think this is Mike. Yeah. Thank God I'm just a moderator. The panelists will answer. Okay. So in cybersecurity, we have the principle. Okay, first of all, cybersecurity is both a feeling and a reality, and the two are not the same. We need to be very clear about that. So we have this issue of security, functionality, and usability. And I believe that's where the ethics issue comes in. And you're looking at it from both the organization perspective and your customer's perspective. How should organizations approach this? The security, functionality, usability triad. Number three, I'm finishing here. Number three, this issue of disclosure. Okay, so there's the whole bug bounty perspective, which is excellent, but there's the whole perspective of organizations being compelled to actually disclose. And I think this is very important because it has worked in the West and it has worked to strengthen cybersecurity postures within organizations. What is the best approach? Why aren't we using it, first of all, in Africa? Back to the culture issue. I'm very passionate about this issue because it's my PhD research topic. Culture. Cybersecurity culture. And the whole measuring of cybersecurity posture from the human aspect perspective. So all these things, the culture aspect, is it a hindrance? What should we do to build cybersecurity culture? That's why we are not talking about ethical issues here anymore as being a hindrance, but as being a positive thing for the organization. Yeah. Thank you very much. My time is up, but I'll have my panelists. Otherwise, Mbugo will come here and kick me out. I think those are very heavy questions that need at least about an extra minute or so to be answered. So I'll ask my panelists to pick at will. I won't even just go jump at them. And especially the one that tickled me, these guys are not ethical. Why are we wearing ethics? But we are not hackers. We are companies just serving people. I've not answered the question, panelists.
I think from a red team side of view is whereby now you perform the security assessments as an unethical person, but with ethics. Because you'll use the same mechanisms, you'll use the same channels. If it's doing recon, you'll do recon the same way an unethical person will do. You'll go through the same channels. Similar tools are the tools that you'll use to do the security assessments to ensure that the systems are secure enough, the systems protect our data, the systems protect ourselves, and the systems protect the company.
Thank you so much. You can have the same tool. Use it either as a weapon or use it as something to help you. I guess that answers the ethical query. No, we're not going to there. Nancy.
Wow. Okay.
Maybe you can answer that one or Apriel's.
I really want to keep it short.
Yeah.
Because my mind is fogging so many answers from the many questions.
Yeah.
But what I can say, you mentioned about cyber warfare.
Yeah.
Definitely we will get in there. I believe we went there.
Michael, are we there?
We went there. So I'll touch on that and touch on what April asked about the culture. I think what we need to do is, I don't know if there's one method of doing it, but it would be a better place if we had more ethical cyber professionals, because most people actually fancy security from a perspective of hacking, whatever Hollywood has sold to people.
Yeah.
So there's more that comes into play in regards to that, and we need to make these considerations as the professionals in place now. We need to educate the coming generation of what cybersecurity is all about.
Asante, Sana.
Yeah.
This stage is no longer mine.
I just want to, there was something about usability. There was 3 terms: usability, functionality, and security. So, this is actually a very interesting topic, because if you put too much security, there will not be any functionality and any usability. So how do you balance this? Also potentially even from an ethical perspective. I think this is a very, very interesting question. And again, because all of this needs to be in balance, and I think this is where cybersecurity, but also kind of business architecture and business functionality and so on needs to go hand in hand. And I think this is something that we need to also learn a little bit more here. I heard earlier MFA or 2FA and so on, OTPs. How usable and user-friendly are those things actually? So, how much, what do you need to put in place? Because and those are some very interesting questions as well. But the time is up.
Thanks, Andreas. And finally, before as I run out of stage, apologizing profusely.
3 seconds. I think you cannot build a cybersecurity culture. You will build a culture that accommodates cybersecurity functionality, usability, and the reason around cybersecurity. That's how I'll leave it.
Thank you very much. It's been a lovely audience. Bye. Okay, you can go.